And also for the people that are connecting via Zoom, you can write to us in the chat whatever you want. If you have a question, if you have a comment, and even if you want to tell us where are you from, we can read it here. I also will be checking all the chat on YouTube for the people that are there. And if it's okay with you, we can actually wait just like 1 more minute for the people, because right now they are connecting, so we can wait a little bit.
Yeah.
Good.
Perfect.
So Jeremy, you move, but you still
No,
in England?
not yet. No, I'm in France and just waiting for lockdown to end on Monday.
Okay.
Very excited.
It's ending on Monday in France?
Well, I mean, it's not ending, is it? It's just moving on to the next phase of life being like it was never like before. But but I am allowed to go out with my wife at the same time, and we are able to walk more than 1 kilometer from our house. So, that's progress.
That's great. It sounds like George Orwell, no? Like 1984.
With more sunshine.
Okay, so we have
in Mexico, it hasn't been like that, right?
No, well, I am in Mexico and also Emiliano, but I'm in Guadalajara. It's like the third biggest city in Mexico. And yeah, I've been home like for the last maybe 2 months already. Like I'm the same as Spain, but because we work from home. But in general, a lot of people are outside actually.
Where are you sitting now, Sanne?
I'm now in the eastern part of the Netherlands.
Oh, okay.
So here we didn't have a complete lockdown. It was partly lockdown. So we were allowed to go out and only go to the supermarkets, but you were allowed to walk in the forest as long as there was sufficient distance and not with big groups. So that gave a little bit, or that gives a little bit of like freedom. It's not that you were completely locked inside the house. Yeah, but now it's slowly already starting after the 11th as well. Opening up, like schools are temporarily starting, and
Great. So if it's okay with you, we can already start since we already have a lot of people online. So we can respect their time. And well, welcome. First of all, saying Emiliano, Jeremy, it's really nice to meet you online and that you are sharing this time with us. Before starting, for attendees that are watching via Zoom or YouTube Live, just feel free to write your comments and questions in the chat, and we will try to answer at the end some of them. For the people that doesn't know me, my name is Karen, co-founder of Comu Travel, and with my colleague Pablo Menendez, who is also online, we start these events online because at the end, well, we're a startup that aims to connect travelers with local communities. But since we cannot do it right now and we have to stay home, we decided to do this type of virtual events to connect online. So before I start, I want Pablo to say some words, and then if it's okay with you, Sanne and Emiliano, you can introduce yourself for 3 to 5 minutes, and then Jeremy, you introduce yourself and you start the discussion. It's okay? Perfect. So Pablo, if you want to say something.
Yes, I just want to thanks the speakers today. Emiliano and Sanne, I met them 3 months ago in Madrid, and now everything has changed a lot. Even the place where the event was hosted, Fitur, became a huge hospital in Spain. But well, we are here to dialogue about a better future and a better tourism. Yeah, for me, Emiliano and Sanne are two inspired leaders in this industry, trying to make tourism something better and a tool to improve many lives. And yeah, also Jeremy is the co-founder of Travindi. We've been working with them since the starting of this quarantine. And yeah, we've been following this website for like sustainable travel news and resources since a long time. So I'm really glad he's here as well to moderate the debate. So yeah, thanks a lot, and we can start listening to you.
So Pablo and I, we will remove our video, so you three stay, and we will come back at the end. But I will be looking at the chat, and if it's okay with you, we can start saying you want to start, and then Emiliano. And if you want me to show your presentation, just tell me. I will be here. Okay.
So before you do,
awesome.
just before you go, will you guys come back for the questions at the end, the Q&A, or will we just do that without you?
Yeah, I think we can come back and we can all help you with the questions.
Perfect. Okay.
Oh.
See you in a bit.
Awesome.
All right. Well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everybody who's currently in this meeting. I'm Sanne. I'm the founder of I Like Local. I Like Local is an online travel marketplace where we connect travelers with local people and local communities in developing countries across Asia and Africa. And in this way, providing authentic experience to travelers and a source of income and empowerment to local people. That's really briefly. And in the light of this webinar, which is about rural development, what we had seen, that was also the reason why we started I Like Local, was during my own travels, I always noticed that my best experiences were the encounters with local people. But at the same time, I saw that a lot of local people on the ground were not really benefiting from tourism. So that was around 2012. And at that time, the peer-to-peer economy was coming up. And I thought this would be a great chance to give people access who never had access to these travel markets. So that's why we launched in 2014 to give these people access as well. And we recently started a partnership with ActionAid, a large NGO across 45 countries in the world, to also really include people at the bottom of the pyramids. Because what we had seen in the past was that mainly middle class income people were joining and were making use of the platform, but the group at the bottom was not really benefiting from it. So we decided, how can we include them as well? And that's where we started this, kicked off this partnership with ActionAid. So that's really, I think, really briefly. I think my screen is, oh yeah.
Okay. So,
yeah.
Perfect. So maybe we can continue with Emiliano.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Karen. I think I will project a very quick presentation. I'm going to try to be very brief. Maybe here, let me just find how to do it. Here we go. Can you see my presentation now?
Give me 1 second. Not yet. So I think, yeah, maybe now. Perfect. Now it's okay.
Okay. I can, yeah.
Now it's okay? Okay, yeah. Great. Well, thank you very much. Well, first, thanks so much, Pablo and Karen, for the invitation. I've been watching the Travindi Comu webinars in the last weeks, and they've been really amazing. So thank you so much for doing this. It's been great. A great way to unite everyone who's in this also. Well, I'm Emiliano. I'm one of the founders of Rutopía. And to start, I wanted to tell you a very brief story about one of the communities we work with, just to understand a little bit of the context of what we do. So it's a small community. It's called El Almacén. It's an indigenous community in the mountains of Oaxaca, Mexico. And for many decades, the main activity they have done is basically selling charcoal that is made from the forests around the community. Actually, El Almacén in Spanish means the storage place, and it's called like that because that's where they used to store the charcoal. And for many decades they did that, and around 10 years ago, all of the men of the community started migrating to the United States or to Mexico City. So in the community, we're only left women and little children. And two of these women are Leti and Alejandra. And they started organizing everyone to decide not to continue doing charcoal and instead make a sustainable income by planting a plant that is called agave and make a traditional drink that is called pulque, and selling this on the nearby towns, and also receiving visitors who are interested in, just visiting the forest and knowing about the Mixtec culture. And they created this group that is called Millenary Women. And they organized everyone. They decided, okay, you're gonna be a guide because you're very good at that. You are gonna be one of the cooks. You're gonna be one of the giving the workshops on local handcrafts. They did a very good job at organizing a biocultural tourism initiative. And the day of the opening arrived, and they put little signs in the nearby highways. They posted things on their Facebook accounts, on their personal Facebook accounts, and they did a little promotion, right? And they were all gathered the day of the opening, and the truth is no one arrived that day. And the day after, no one arrived, and the weeks passed, and no visitors were coming. And when we met Leti and Alejandra, it had been 2 years since they launched this project, and they had received literally no visitors at all. And that was around 3 years ago when we started Rutopía, and we realized that this was not an isolated case. It's just one of thousands of cases in Mexico that are failing and that are struggling to go to market just because there are no visitors, and these projects are being abandoned. And at the same time, we're living in a country that is one of the most touristic ones that had last year, before coronavirus, received 38 million travelers, international travelers, plus an increasing national market. And all these people, when they're trying to go to really authentic places and go to natural sites, they usually end up in places like this one. Can you confirm just that you're still looking at my presentation? I just want to make sure I'm not.
Yeah, everything's great.
Yeah, we are.
Great. Thank you so much. So what is the problem here? We started questioning ourselves, and we realized that all these communities have everything they need to create amazing touristic products, because they have the nature, they have the culture, the local talent, and they even have received investment to build infrastructure and lodging facilities. However, this was not enough, because they also have to sell, they have to connect with the market. And for this, you have to have good reservations, you have to have easy bookings, you have to be visible online, you have to have good customer service, preferably in more than one language. And you also have to be resilient to late and just-in-time payments. And the truth is, in Mexico, there's no access for this for most of these small touristic initiatives, and it's the reason they are failing. And that's the reason why we decided to create Rutopía and design Rutopía around this specific issue. And Rutopía is basically a platform that empowers small rural initiatives to design and sell trips online, while allowing travelers from around the world to find and live amazing experiences out of the beaten tracks. And I'm just going to go very quickly through how we do it, but basically we identify these small touristic initiatives that meet the criteria to work, which is mainly conservation projects that are community owned, and some, well, safety, it's a very important one. And then we, using a methodology, we unite all the services provided by these communities and provide experiences that are unique, that are safe, and that are all included. And then we take charge of the commercialization online. Usually for a touristic initiative, if you want to sell online, you have to pay high fixed costs in terms of reservation software, customer service, and even payment facilities, which sometimes can be as high as $3,000 a month in just fixed costs. And what we're trying to do, what we're doing is we're providing these services, just charging a small fee directly to the traveler with each reservation. And that's how we are tackling and providing these services that complement the amazing experiences that the community provides to have access to the market. And we are selling through our own Rutopía.com portal. We also have an alliance with Airbnb that was signed last year to sell through the Airbnb platform and through other different agencies and channels. And well, today we've been working 3 years now, and we work with 12 amazing communities that have incredible projects. They're doing a very good job. I believe actually Miguel from El Triunfo was on one of these webinars a couple of weeks ago. That was so exciting. They're doing a great job in a tropical rainforest in the south of Mexico. And yeah, that's basically what we've been doing. And today it's a very important moment for us, because we believe this whole crisis and situation in the world, it's giving us the opportunity to rethink a new tourism industry that it's actually based on sustainability, equity, and fair trade. And that's what we stand for. So that's our quick introduction. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. I stay on because we're going to keep your video on because we're going to pretty well go straight into a chat. I'll just briefly introduce myself and then we want to hear lots more from the two of you. I'm really only here to moderate. My name is Jeremy. I'm a writer, speaker, and a consultant. I'm the editor of Trivindi. I co-founded it. Trivindi, I formed it 5 years ago with a woman, Anula Galuska. The idea at the time was we were frustrated because there was no one place where you could go and find news and comment on sustainable tourism. And so we started just putting it all in one place. And it really is nothing more complicated than that. I mean, it boils down to it, a website where you could find news and comment from all manner of different sources aggregated in one place. Over the years, we built and grew. The biggest success we've had by far and away has been the launch maybe 5 years ago of the Spanish version of Trivindi, Trivindi Español, which I think probably now is more successful and is doing more wonderfully than the English one. And that is down fantastically to the incredible work of Angela Rodriguez and the many volunteers that work with her to make it a truly wonderful and unique resource as far as I know in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish, so I have to just believe it is wonderful. Everyone tells me it is, and I constantly meet people who have discovered it and use it to bring themselves together. So that is pretty fantastic. I have spent most of my life starting up things and then seeing them succeed or seeing them fail. I haven't worked in a large company for a very, very long time. My most recent startup I launched in January this year when I co-founded and launched Tourism Declares a Climate Emergency, which is an initiative to try to bring the industry to acknowledge the scale of the climate emergency. And we launched on January the 14th this year. It seemed a great time to launch. We felt that we could get everyone excited with a new decade about focusing on an enormous emergency that everyone would put their energies into. And we were doing really, really well, and things were really going, and everyone was really focusing. And then all of a sudden telling people that there was an emergency, they were like, yeah, we know. But it wasn't the emergency we wanted them to talk about anymore. Everyone now, of course, wanted to talk about coronavirus. And we're going to talk about coronavirus, of course, and we want to talk about how that has affected both of your companies and how you see what might happen in the future. But before we do, let's just step back to beforehand, because of course you both were developing your initiatives, your companies for many years, I'm assuming, before this happened, and you had some plans and some successes and some challenges. Sanne, having just listened to what Emiliano said, does this ring true, these challenges you found of rural entrepreneurs, people who have committed themselves to some form of small-scale tourism and then no one comes? Microphone.
Well, we haven't really experienced it like really on the ground. What we have seen while talking to community-based tourism organizations or small community initiatives is that they have difficulties finding that market. Mm-hmm. And when they do, and when they, for example, start working with travel agencies, it keeps them from tapping into the larger travel market, because they are like the gateway. They are the gateway to these communities, and often they don't have their own websites. So it's very, very difficult to find them. And yeah, so that is something that they were complaining about when we were like having contact with them, but that was one of the main reasons that they were looking for other solutions. But yeah, as we are like in 19 countries, we haven't been really, as Rutopía is really focused on Mexico and is really into like this, more the communities and the community work, and together building the experiences. We are mostly working with maybe companies like Emiliano is running, community-based tourism organizations, NGOs, individuals who do great things, and we help them to market and sell these experiences to travelers. Is it me? Oh, sorry.
Microphone.
I was going to leave it on. Otherwise, we're going to be back and forth. The challenge of finding people, especially in a world where we were looking for the most authentic, the most rural, the least commodified. And as you said, people who most likely have not got a big, complex web presence. How do you find these people? And how do you then ensure that someone who is going to be hard to find still has the necessary capacity to deliver tourism that your international guests are going to come on, so that you meet both people's sets of expectations?
That's a very good question. How I really started was I had a very clear picture in mind what type of experiences I was looking for. I was just Googling. I was looking for community-based tourism organizations, country X, Y, Z. I was looking particularly on certain keywords, and I started to reach out to people. So that's how I initially started. And now over the years, you see that either people approach us, they find us online, they apply, and we say, oh yeah, this is suitable or this is not suitable. And I agree, like what you often see is that they are applying with very standardized packages or very standardized experiences. And we are critical in that sense. We say, okay, if we see that you are doing something very ordinary that people can find everywhere, and you can even look in your own travel guidebook, and we don't think that we can make a difference if we start like offering these type of experiences. So we have set a number of criteria, like it needs to be immersive, so people really need to interact and learn, and like having a day or some days in the life of a local and really learn about and have this cultural exchange, because that's what we have seen ourselves while traveling, is that these are the things that stick. It's not the most beautiful white sandy beach that you see. It's are these connections that you make along the way, and the stories that you hear, and that's what we really want to let people experience, and not like a group dance that like there is no exchange at all. It's definitely something that we avoid. So yeah, we definitely turn a lot of people down, and that's a difficult thing, because at some point we saw that like the people who were joining were indeed more middle class people who have access to internet, who have English language skills, etc. And when like trying to include this group of more communities, and who are like maybe not having this access or the education level or etc. So how do you reach them, and how do you make sure that they understand what travelers are looking for, that the quality is good? And we notice we can't do that ourselves, because these people need just more support, and you need to understand how it's very cultural sensitive. You need to be in these communities. You cannot just go in and so that's why we said, okay, we should find a large partner who has that experience and is interested in maybe collaborating in this. Yeah.
Okay. Emiliano, is that the same question to you? How do you balance the needing to find, the challenge of finding people who are off the grid, let's say, and bringing them into tourism, while also making sure that when the tourists then arrive, that they meet expectations? I mean, do you offer training, for example?
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. I think taking the first point that you said about technology, I think in Mexico, and I think in many Latin American countries, is that ecotourism has been a strategy as a means for conservation. So there's many of these projects with people that already have received the training and everything they need to provide fairly good and safe experiences on the ground. Usually, yes, there's not good communication and technology and way to connect with the market, but it doesn't mean they're extremely isolated. Maybe they will not be able to be on Airbnb, on another platforms, or to give a very confident follow-up constantly to the possible sales they have, but they can for sure every 2 or 3 days go to the nearest town, get some Wi-Fi, and check if they have received any reservation from Rutopía, for example. No, that's a way we overcome in the sense of technology and these kind of barriers. In terms of quality of the experience by itself, I think as Sanne was saying, the most important thing that we have also seen it's more the contact, the authenticity with the local person, and the way the experience is actually carried not just as an economic transaction, but actually an experience where you feel you are being hosted in a very authentic place. And in that sense, we do provide not formal training, like we don't offer certifications about hygiene or safety things. We assure that they have this previously. What we do is we give very specific, how would you say in English? Yeah, like tips, you know, like very specific things that they can do to improve the experience of the traveler. And we do it more in a constant way. So what we do is after each trip, we gather all the feedback from the travelers, we synthesize this, and we give it back to the community or to the host so they can improve in small things. And I think the most important things are very small details that can be fixed very, very easily, no? Just as receiving the person on time on the right spot, with a little snack for the trip that it's 1 hour and a half, you know, these little things that are not formal trainings, but are things that really enhance the experience of the travelers. And that's what we do as Rutopía mainly.
Okay. And having, I mean, I love the idea that you do that you go back and take them, the feedback. I remember there's a wonderful organization in community homestay in Nepal that works with people completely off the grid. And they went and sat and read TripAdvisor reviews to the women who ran the things and said, you have to understand that people are sitting on the other side of the world and writing reports about you. And they said it was just such a vital part of that communication to get past the notion that we're all sitting reading our reviews and actually, but nonetheless, how important it is to have that information. I wonder, Emiliano, just to follow up on that, and Sanne, you answer as well. As you've now gathered a large amount of responses and reviews that you then take and tell them the individual things, are you seeing patterns of the certain things that are most common, the challenges that you need to address and to take? So when you bring on new people, for example, these are the specific advice that you give them?
Yeah. Thanks, Jeremy. I think that it's funny that you asked that. To be honest, we hadn't done that because of the operations and, you know, the day-to-day of all the time operations. But since this month we've been completely inactive, we've actually working on that a lot, like trying to find these patterns in a quantitative way as much as possible. I mean, we're no mathematicians, but we're trying to make sense of this data we gathered in a sort of organized way. I actually talked to Sanne about this a couple of weeks ago because we're trying to make sense of all this and compare our patterns. So right now, I guess we have some findings, but one that it's pretty clear and contundent is that the travelers are still, like, even the adventurous travelers that want to go and visit these amazing authentic places are still very concerned, or it's very important for them to have clean beds and clean toilets. I think that's a very common pattern everywhere.
Yeah. And Sanne, working across 19 countries, I mean, so are there trends that stand, apart from clean loos and clean beds, are there consistencies across, or is it so different wherever you are?
No, I think what's most important is that what people read on the websites, what they expect, is what they want to see. So there needs to be consistency in what you're sharing. So to manage really the expectations, I think that's very important. And then, of course, like punctuality in terms of like pickups, if that's included, and receiving the information on the right time. So it's not only the experience on the ground, it's also like the online experience that they will have, which is our work as well. So that like everything is smooth, that they receive the right information, that there are no like doubts. And then of course, like, yeah, when they are really doing the experience itself, that it is really what they have read. Furthermore, we haven't really seen patterns like that we got feedback like the beds are not clean, or it's too basic, or it's like not particularly what we have seen, and that's something not really related to feedback to provide to proceed to the host or the local people, but is we have asked, like, we want to understand who are these travelers, right? Who are these people who are looking for these type of experiences? So we started asking questions like, when you are traveling, what are you exactly looking for? And most of them, they say, Well, there are three things. They want to learn. They want to learn about a certain culture. They want to dive in, like deep in. They want, therefore, to meet local people, and they want to know that their money is going to the right people. So they want to make sure that the money I'm paying online is indeed going there. And so these were like some very common signals that we saw across the type of people who booked with us.
Okay, thank you very much. Both of you, but Emiliano first. I mean, you're both now at a position where you've won awards, you have recognition. Emiliano, you were saying how, you're now connected, partnered, embedded inside of Airbnb. So you have reached a certain stage at which you have presence and people are aware of you and customers are finding you. You've been written about in, global newspapers and magazines. But that wasn't the case on day one. And yet there will have been a point, as there is a point in the journey of any startup, when you have a brilliant idea and you start developing it, but no one knows what you're doing. And you've got to go from brilliant idea and really enthusiastic small group of people to actually happening. I mean, from your experience, both of you, what have you learned that got you from, a little quiet thing happening in a corner to being known?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's a very good question because
it's a very good question.
Yeah, and for every startup, it's different, right? So we really chose, like when I started I Love Local, I really chose to bootstrap the company and not raise money for something I didn't know if that was going to work. I didn't feel comfortable with that. So I first wanted to see how it was going. And in the beginning, it was very scary. You put something online you have worked on, in our case, for 10 months, and we had like these 180 experiences, 80 hosts. And then you're waiting for people to come, right? And then you see like the first booking. Okay, I really hope that everything is going well. And that went on for like quite a bit, although we got like good like PR and great stories in well-known media outlets. But the biggest change for us was 2018. And we did a crowdfunding campaign just in 2017 before. And we somehow, and I really believe it was not because of we did action X, Y, Z that suddenly gave us more like recognition, that gave us more bookings. But I think there were some forces going on or developments from different sides. So one was that there were more travelers interested in these type of things. So, and that's something that you saw by have reports from the UNWTO, from Skift, that one of the trends became immersive travel, impactful travel, experiential travel, different wordings for it. So I think that was a big one. And then secondly, you saw that the impact making parts, because when we launched in 2014, there were only a few companies, marketplaces out there. Like there was Airbnb, of course, really focused on renting out your space, and with locals. So there were a few players, but mainly focused on more Western countries to cater to the needs of the traveler, but not really looking at what are the benefits for the people who offer. And I think it's not only in tourism, but I think it's something that's currently happening already a couple of years back, is that there is a development going about doing fair business, which is going a bit off the model of only profit making, only unlimited growth, at the cost of quality, at the cost of other people, at the cost of nature. But really having a more balanced view on profit making and what is my purpose as a company in this world and how can I make it better. And I think that because we already had that focus from the beginning, I think that really helped us. And and then we got the recognition from booking.com and then the UNWTO, and things started to move, and now everything is, of course, that has stopped.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if that really answered your question.
No,
For us,
no,
it
that's
was not
great.
like one particular thing, but yeah.
And Emiliano, anything you'd like to add from your own experience?
Yeah, I think for us, I think first it was very clear when we started growing and getting a little bit more recognition in the media. I think it's when we did a little leap of faith. You know, at the beginning, in the first years of Rutopía, it was just basically my co-founders and I, and we were bringing all the, well, we usually went with the travelers, with the groups to the field. And I don't know why, but we had in our minds that part of the value, we had this crazy idea that part of the value for the travelers was actually having us on the trip, you know, giving explanations and stuff. And we were scared of not going to the trips. We thought, oh no, if we don't go, maybe they won't have such a fun time and stuff. And one day we decided, okay, we're not gonna go to this one. And it was terrifying. And people actually had a much better experience, you know. And then we started getting the feedback from trips that we didn't go, and we realized like people were having a much more better time without us. So then we decided we were just going to follow that path and just, you know, start just doing the things that we were good at. Definitely not tour guides, but more like trying to make good connections. And I think that's when we started to get more attention, because we become more like a platform. And it was, I think, on the beginning of 2019 that one of the travelers wrote an article that became a little bit viral about Rutopía, and I think that's when everything started to grow and we started to have more traction. And since then, it's just been a very fun way.
Brilliant. I mean, I think that's a brilliant observation. And although I live in a very different world to you, I know that the hardest thing in the world when you create things and start them is to think maybe someone else could actually do it better than me, and I can let go and trust that it will happen well without me. And if I could learn that skill of not micromanaging and just allowing it to happen in new ways, then it will happen in ways you could never have imagined. And some of them will be better than you could ever have imagined as well. Which, unfortunately, you both referred to it, and of course, we're going to have a little talk about it because I think it's so incredibly significant, of course. We're in this unique, hopefully, moment of total pause in our industry. First, are you both totally paused, or have you repurposed and are doing something different at the moment?
No, I'm not doing something different.
Right.
In that sense, I haven't stopped running my business and started doing something else. No.
No, I don't mean that you're starting doing something like you haven't resigned your business, but
yeah.
you haven't repurposed to running virtual tours. You aren't.
Oh yes, we have done. We are in the process of. So we started looking at. Okay, this is the situation. What are the things that we can do, and what really fits our brand, and what fits our host, and what do we really believe in? And I think that craving for people, even though they are locked inside their houses, the craving of at some point in time go and travel again and explore the world, in whatever form that may be, will still be there. And we believe that we want that connection that they normally have on the ground. We want to make that virtual. And it was already something we had in mind for a long time, that we want to bring more of these local stories, let people connect with them already when they are not like face to face. So one of the things that was like Airbnb was one of the first ones who started with the virtual experiences. And for us, it's a little bit different because we are working with people who might not always have very good internet. But we are looking now at what are the things that we can offer and that are unique, that are like different than maybe just an online cooking class. Because personally, I don't really believe in that much. So I think we need to do it a little bit different. So that's one thing. And the other thing that we are now looking at is with Google to create like virtual tours, and also offering or digitalizing the skills of local people. So how can they be empowered by learning to create a website, or to do like online marketing, or to learn photography or videography in a digital way. So these are two examples that we are currently doing, and then we are like busy with some like storytelling, what I already mentioned, We started some Instagram live video interviews with them. Yeah, so we haven't really changed our business completely. But we are looking, okay, what is still unique? What is of value to both sides that we can add?
Emiliano?
Yes. So yeah, we've basically stopped the trips since March. So March, April, May, and I think we're gonna be without actually accepting reservations until well, this starts again, maybe October. We're actually taking reservations, but for as a way to support the local communities by paying your travel in advance. So I think that's been at the beginning what we've been working on these weeks. It's a campaign that it's called Explore Mexico Differently. So it's basically we had this alliance with other NGOs try to push to position on the minds of travelers in Mexico in general, just this idea of traveling in a sustainable and conscious way. So taking advantage of the Easter vacations, we started like making these a little bit of awareness videos and campaign. I think our philosophy for this month, it's more like, yes, we are stopping. We cannot actually go on trips right now or selling trips, but we think it's also a great opportunity to rethink the way tourism is gonna emerge after this whole crisis. So, I mean, I think it's a great opportunity not to go back to normal. I think after this, people are wanna be looking for smaller groups, not massive places, especially in outdoors. And also, as someone said that I heard the other day, it's a concept I really like. People are gonna go from wanting to go to the all-inclusive to go to the all-included, meaning a destination in which everyone is included, a more holistic way in which you actually can interact with everything around it. So I think our vision for this month is trying to make as many alliances as possible and actually push as a whole sector in Mexico of sustainable and conscious travel, push together to actually gain terrain against the traditional sun and beach tourism in Mexico. And when people start traveling again, they know this exists and they choose a more conscious travel. And I think that's what's on our minds for this month.
And I guess for both of you, because the people you're working with are people who have lives outside of tourism. So the local people are not relying on 100% or 90% of their income to come from tourists. This is a supplementary income. So it is a model that although you have removed whatever income you were enabling them, you haven't removed their livelihoods.
True. Yes. For most of them, it's like an additional income stream. But I do have to say that in some cases, it's a bit scary because, especially like what you see in African countries, where there's also focus on wildlife protection, and suddenly you see the stream of tourists completely evaporating, is that they start like poaching again, or they start like to feed their families, to sell, to so that's really I think really a threat, especially for countries where tourism is a very big income generator.
And we seem to spend our time at the moment in questions and answering, trying to work out what the answers are. Where would you try to solve that challenge on the reality that it's very unlikely that we're going to have a lot of high-paying international tourists to some of these countries that are extremely fragile ecosystems and incredibly dependent upon it? Yeah. I mean, do you have a solution or an idea?
Well, it's a very difficult one.
Yeah.
And I'm even like here in the Netherlands, what you see as soon as borders are starting to open up again, or people can start moving around again, companies that are dependent on tourism, they can start like earning income again, because it will start with domestic tourism. But and I don't know how that is in Latin America, but in Africa, especially like countries like Kenya or Tanzania or Uganda, where tourism income is very is very important. And domestic tourism is not really available. No. It's something they want, but it's just not the case. So how to replace that? We haven't really found a solution besides what is it that we can do virtually, or how can we maybe generate like small amounts of income. And I think that's like what the whole tourism industry is cracking their hats on. Like how can we, what do we need to do? It doesn't feel good to say like, okay, I have no clue, and you're like, being put against like a wall, and there's no way out. And we have like spoken on a webinar last week about like community-based tourism in Africa, and even there you see, we haven't found a solution for that problem at this moment. I don't know, Emiliano, if that's something that's happening in Latin America as well.
Yes, I think in our case, it is true, as you say, Jeremy, that mostly, I mean, almost none of the hosts of Rutopía depend solely on tourism. It was for many of them a very important source of income. We are trying to encourage the people that already booked not to ask for a refund, but rather ask the money to be sent to the communities and then use them. So like kind of a micro loan to these tour providers in the communities. That's one strategy we're following. Mm-hmm. But it's true that we are afraid, as Sanne says, that when this income is not, there's other opportunities to generate an income for these people, but it's usually on extractive economies. No, maybe if they don't have trips this year, maybe they will go, and in the case of El Almacén, it's not the case, but just as an example, they might go back to the charcoal industry, or other countries will go to, other communities will go to the palm oil or cattle breeding. And that's for sure something that is very concerning for us. And we are trying to work out this internally. In terms of the middle term, in Mexico, I think we have the benefit that we do have a domestic travelers. Actually, when we launched Rutopía, we thought that most of the travelers were going to be from Europe. And it was a good surprise that almost 70% of our travelers actually come from Mexico. It's just Mexicans from the cities that are trying to see Mexico in a different way and visit unknown places of Mexico. So in that sense, we think in the middle term, we might actually benefit from that, because people that are not going to be traveling outside of Mexico might want to know Mexico better. And that's something we're betting on.
Okay, listen, we've got only just about 10 minutes left. So we've got a few questions that people who've been listening in have sent in. So let's try and roll through those. I don't know if you can see the questions or not. Can you guys see those?
Yeah, I'll see them.
Great, okay. Oh, hello guys.
Hi.
Actually, we can read some if you prefer. We can read it and then you just answer, if it's better for you.
I don't mind, as you wish.
Okay. Well, actually, Pablo, you had a question before, so if you want to start.
Yes. Yes, I would like to know a little bit about your own personal story. Like, what were you doing before starting your startups? And what was the purpose that drives you to take this step and this risk to start your business? And if this main purpose or driver has changed over the time during those years? A little bit of the personal story.
Shall I start?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, for me, this business all started because I wanted to do something around one of my passions, which was traveling and meeting other cultures and bringing that same experience that I had to other travelers. And at the same time, I wanted to have a business that was purposeful. I used to work as a business consultant, working for large multinational companies. And at some point in time, I was really making long hours and long days. And I thought, like, what's the sense? What's the sense? And what I'm really producing, does that really make a difference? And my answer was no. And that gave me insight that I said, okay, why should work feel like work? Why should work not be like feeling like a hobby? And I thought, that's what I want. And that's like, and I had the chance that I had some time to really rethink and how should that look like. And well, so that's at the end how I came up with I Like Local. That yeah, are two in one.
Awesome. Thanks, Anne. Yeah, so in our case, I think before we had nothing to do with the tourism industry, and we in Rutopía, we see tourism as a mean to achieve regeneration in nature and culture, and not as an end by itself. I think me personally and Diego and Sebastian, the other co-founders of Rutopía, the three of us, we come from actually working in participative designing communities, and I think we are overall environmentalists and passionate for the culture of Mexico and Latin America. And I think that's our main purpose and drive. I think that's what we are kind of married to. Right now, we see a lot of sense in tourism as a tool to achieve this protection and this regeneration. But I guess in the future, if tourism was not an option anymore, or there were other opportunities to achieve this as well in an effective way, I guess we'll probably also try those other solutions. So I think in that sense, we've been very, very focused, always to keep in mind in our decision making that this is our ultimate goal.
Okay, I can ask you another question, which is, well, this is a good one. What about a partnership with all these all-inclusive resorts following the crisis? Is it something that you might be interested, or maybe only with the sustainable and go local agencies? Because I think, well, you said that actually it's going to be different right after the crisis, but what about the big hotels and big agencies? Will you be thinking about partnership with them?
Yes, we yeah. What we have seen as well in the last few years, when in 2015 we started reaching out to set up partnership with travel agencies and hotel chains, and but at that time it was all a bit scary, this local travel, and how do you know it's all safe? And but now in the last year, you see that there are more travel agencies who are normally catering to more luxurious travelers or more convenient travelers, that they start showing interest. And yeah, and so we started approaching them and see, okay, is this something that would be of interest to your clients, to let them experience a city or a location in a different way than just the standard touristy things. And yeah, so for us, we are, I think, yeah, we were already on that road to set up partnership with different hotel chains. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about?
In our case, it's been actually in our minds, and it's a challenge we've been facing. So many, especially on the very touristic areas, for example, in the Yucatan Peninsula, many of the communities actually already receive travelers from these all-inclusive resorts. So actually, one of the communities we work with received travelers that bring on tours on buses from one of these resorts. The problem is that in most of these cases, it's focused on quantity over quality. So just to give you an example, in this case, the tour operator was keeping 95% of the income, and only 5% was arriving to the community. And I think that's the common denominator of many of these kind of day trips from the resorts to the nearby communities. And it's something that, of course, we are not into, because we want to maximize the benefit in the community. You know, we want to go for quality, maybe fewer tourists, but that have actually a deeper connection, that stay more days in the community, that actually sleep there, to maximize the economic spillover in the community. So that's one little obstacle. However, we are trying now to find day trips that are still just sleep in the all-inclusive, but during the day you have many activities, but that it's not only go and pay $3 to see the waterfall and take a picture and go, but actually you stay the whole day, you take workshops, you have this connection, even if it's just one day. And that's something we've been exploring.
Brilliant. I just want to ask one of the questions from people who sent in various questions for us. What I'm going to go with here is, we've been talking about virtual tours a little bit and reinventing during this. Do any of you think that this is actually something that's going to have some longevity to it, that we're going to see a growth in virtual tourism? Or do you think that it is, a natural response to being unable to go outside, and we are desperately trying to create videos, but that they'll be gone once we can go outside again?
I believe in this sense, with the type of experiences that, like the cooking classes, or that is really, I believe that people want to be there and meet people face to face, see where they live, how experience the environment, over like doing an online cooking class with roots in Nepal. Because and of course it's from my own viewpoints, and I believe like a lot of our travelers, when they book, that's what they are looking for. They want to immerse in this culture, and they want to experience everything around it. If I would book a cooking class, I'm not booking that cooking class because this person is the best chef in the world. I'm booking it because of everything else. And if I'm going to want to really learn like certain cooking skills, I would now go to maybe a great Italian chef who's also offering cooking classes. So I think that face-to-face connection is essential. And I will not say that maybe the virtual experience can exist next to it. But I think at the end, people prefer that, one-on-one connection.
Okay, I'm going to answer a question, having asked them, because I actually have an answer as well on this one, and which is that, and this comes from the point of view of someone who spent most of his life as a writer and a journalist and doing an awful lot of travel writing, and has always been very frustrated. I think that the fam trip, the press trip, whatever you want to call it, is out of date, and the idea of taking 10, 20, 8, 5, whatever it might be, journalists or people from the industry to come and look at your product and bring them from across the world and take them on a tour for 10 days around your destination. This is an expensive, carbon intensive way of talking to 8 people. But if we're now filming the stories that are happening, we could completely digitalize the fam trip. We have no need to bring 8 journalists on 8 flights to come and see you. You could create your selection of experiences on video, and then you could share them to every publication and every website and every blog that there was in the world. And anyone who ever wanted background detail on what was happening, there it all is. And we wouldn't need to put people on planes. So that is where I imagine there's a future to them.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Do we still have time for another question, or do you want to?
Yeah, I think we can ask more. Well, this is like a really quick one, but I think it's interesting. Do you have a standards available somewhere so someone can self-assess if they'll meet their criteria? I mean, for be in your website, or is it like you have to do the process by yourself as Rutopía or Island Local?
I don't know, Emiliano. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I can. Okay, I can go. Yes, we have a very specific criteria. It's actually right now anyone can fill it, and then it's just evaluated in a very easy way. So it's very quick to know if it's it's the possibility to be online in Rutopía. It's not a public evaluation, but for example, when we work with alliances or local networks, we usually send this evaluation sheet for them so they can self-evaluate the different projects, and then that automatically gives them a ranking. So it's very easy.
And we do have some criteria put on the website before people start the application process. And we have tried to be as specific as possible, but you still see that sometimes people don't really get exactly what we are looking for. but yeah, so there are definitely some criteria that you can look at and see, okay, is this something that I that I can meet or not.
Maybe Jeremy, you want to ask one more?
There's a question about the impact on rural communities for rural tourism. Someone was saying that they were reading that in rural Spain, really tourism is a complement to the activities that exist in rural life. Obviously, we're seeing this right now with tourism removed and rural communities existing in whatever way they are. How crucial do you see tourism to enable rural communities to protect and preserve their customs and their traditions and their ways of life?
Yeah, in that sense, I think in the case of Mexico, at least, and I think in most of Latin America, it's very important to when you're going to do tourism in a rural community, you are as an organization or as an enterprise, it's important that you actually measure or you make sure that the touristic activity is going to be a substitute for an extractive economy or for migration of the people going there to other places to find a job. I think with that premise, if you're doing rural tourism and actually providing a source of job that actually helps to the reevaluation of the local ecosystem and the local traditions, and that gives them a way of staying on their homes and making sense of that without going away, I think it is a very good a very good option for sustainable or even regenerative development in rural economies. But I think, as Jeremy was saying before, and we see it now, it's very important also that it's not wholly dependent on tourism, right? As we were seeing, it's very important, it's a complement.
And how would you think you get that balance right so that you can be supportive but not commodifying, so you don't turn what is actually someone's lifestyle into a product?
Yeah, how we do it in Rutopía is we take a lot of attention to who we are working with. So, for example, we work with specific types of organizations in the rural communities. We work with cooperative organizations. We work with local committees of, in Mexico, it's called ejidos, which is a kind of local social political organization. So when we work with cooperatives or these local government organizations, we are making sure that there's a consensus on the community that these tourism activities are going to happen and that it's going to have a positive distribution, a positive impact by having a good distribution among everyone in the community. We do not work, for example, with private initiatives in rural communities, even if it's a person from the community, but if it's only one person without the backup of the whole community, it's something we would not go into, for example.
Okay.
And that's the same what we see as well. Like, especially with ActionAid, we are mostly dealing with communities, and they are very focused on making sure that the whole community benefits, because otherwise it creates like frictions. But that's just one part. I think that there are several other parts that you need to take into account when you start bringing some tourists to a certain location. And how do you make sure it's not over tourism? How do you make sure it's not becoming a commodity, that they can still be unique? How do you make sure like plastic waste or all these different risks that you need to take into account? And yeah, so like one thing is like what we have created is like the fair distribution among the community, setting like limits to how the number of tourists or travelers coming to community, like transportation options, or like educating local people about plastic waste and how can we replace it. So these are just a few examples, but it's the same, I think, that are always like effects that you maybe haven't taken into account, and you should try to get that picture, well, possibly as complete as possible, so that you can already think about what kind of measurements can we take.
Brilliant, thank you.
I have one question. This is more personal. So we always say that we have to collaborate and we have to work together, because you are two different startups. Como it's a third startup, but at the end we share like the same purpose, ambition, and we think more than ever like now we have to work together. So my question is like, how can we work together, but not only maybe by having this type of conversations or sharing some good practices, but like, how can we go further, you know, like strengthen our vision and our purpose at the same time, and by working all with the same vision, you know? And so I don't know if I have I'm clear with my question, but it's like, how can we take this relationship further to work better as different startups, but that share the same purpose?
Well, I think it's very good. I think there are even more companies coming every day with maybe that similar mindset, and everybody is finding their own ways how to create like this, make that whole model work. Well, we are already in touch, Emiliano and I, to see how we can collaborate. We also plan to expand further to Latin America. So these are one of the partners. Also from Booking.com, we have some great companies that we can collaborate with. Recently, I was approached by another company in Canada. So I really believe that, and I really like your question. I think it's a very fair question. Like, how can we bring all these forces together to really make that change happening? And I really already believe that, like, having that open attitudes and starting this conversation and see, okay, where can we align and what can we do together? I think that's a good start. And
Yeah, I would completely agree. Your answer is your question. The very fact that you ask that question and you have people nodding and wanting to find the same thing is the major step forward, because it means you have people with like minds and like interested saying, how do we solve it? That then moves from how do we solve it to what do we want to solve, and what are your problems and what are my problems? I think the danger would be too much trying to find the vehicle to do it without knowing actually what we were wanting to try to address. And we need to let form follow function. So what is it we're actually trying to do? What are the challenges? It might just be that the best way to do it is to meet up and chat on Zooms, and that is by far and away the most effective way. And you get a group of people who share great things. It might be that it turns into something more text heavy, or it might be that it's meeting in real places, but it depends very much, I think, on what through conversation and questioning each other you find are your shared challenges and shared opportunities.
Yeah, and I think, Karen, following up on that, Jeremy, I think a common objective, I mean, one of many that we always say, it's just making the pie bigger. Right now, everyone who's in this kind of tourism, maybe it's this size, but the tourism industry in general is this. So I think one way of collaboration is, instead of thinking on a competition mindset where we're trying to reach the same people, is just how do we all together make the community tourism the mainstream one day, the day when everyone is thinking at their top of mind, oh, I'm going to go to a Comu, or I like local Rutopía trip, instead of I'm going to go to this Hilton resort or whatever. I think that's a common objective that we can work to.
Yeah. And sharing, I think sharing is so powerful, like sharing best practices, sharing all the learnings or the pitfalls, or how are you doing that in Mexico? Maybe we can use a similar model in Kenya, or that exchange. I think that's crucial.
Totally. So, well, I think it's good time to maybe finish, but I don't know if Jeremy, you have one more question, maybe you can ask, and then I would like to make a little bit of a conclusion, like each of you share with us a small conclusion about all this, and for the attendees, what can we do after this chat? Like, what is your recommendation for us? So,
I'll be honest, I don't have another. I think that final question was the right place to end with. How do we work together to continue these things? That to then take it down another stream would go off in a different direction. So I prefer to let you round it up and to say that it's been a joy to be part of this conversation.
Great. So maybe you share with us this conclusion, and Jeremy also, I would like to hear your conclusion and maybe your thoughts about all this topic, and then we can just say goodbye.
I mean, for me, it's just been wonderful hearing both these stories and hearing that the sort of tourism that when I first got involved in sustainable, responsible tourism 13 years ago, 14 years ago, and those were the sort of little places I was trying to find. These experiences was exactly what I was trying to find, and it was very difficult to find them and incredibly rewarding when I did. And over the years, people have said to me, oh, I've got this great new platform to find those experiences. And many of those platforms, sadly, over the last 13, 14 years have come and gone. And so to hear of 2 stories of platforms that are still here and that I truly believe will still be here and flourishing when we come out the other side of this crisis, and have got to this point, does make me, I don't know if we're going to be mainstreaming, because I think that's another story altogether. But that if we can be resilient and be offering a genuine alternative that is sustainable in all the forms of sustainable, then, and it seems that these 2 stories do, then I find that an incredibly, inspiring and optimistic thing for me to take away.
Thank you, Jeremy. I don't know who wants to continue for the conclusion. Maybe.
Thanks, Jeremy, for that conclusion. I think I guess I would just want to leave with this reflection that yes, it is a very bad crisis and it's a very bad moment for the tourism industry, but I think as I said before, it's also a great moment to rethink. So everyone who's in this industry, I guess we can take these months to actually get in touch with one another and also talk a lot to the hosts, providers, or whoever you're working with, and see how you can make more regenerative circular systems in your own value chain. And I think it's a great time to do this. It's something that usually in our day-to-day, it's not something you would stop and do. And I think right now the world is giving us everything to just focus on that. So I hope we all find good solutions for our problems during these times.
Excellent.
Yeah, it was a great chat. I think it's good to have this conversation and see, how will that future look like, and what can we do as travel businesses, and share stories with each other to be inspired and get maybe new ideas. I am very positive in that sense that I always believe that we are getting out better at the end. If we survive or not survive, I think, but these moments that are happening currently and this reset, I don't believe that it is for nothing. So I think we will get out of it. The whole world will get out of it better, and that's really what I also hope. I think that's how I would like to end. And thank you all for being here and sharing this hour together.
Thanks. Pablo, maybe you want to say some final thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would like to add a thought about this, like the importance of this tool to really transform the type of travel experiences we all are promoting, because I think it's also a tool to create change makers for society. Because even, for travelers, like all of these experiences are really impactful, and it's a way to also look back and to see that you don't need to live with that much, or that you can create something different even in your own life to preserve the nature and the culture. And it's also a tool to create change makers within the communities, because those people who are entrepreneurs of their own tourist projects, are really like people who are really engaged with their communities. And if they get the supports of the incomes that travelers provide, they can do much more within their communities. And it's a really incredible tool for them to value their own culture and their own identity, that I think the world needs a lot to learn from this type of cultures and like millennium cultures that have been developed, and some of them are in risk to be lost. So I think yes, it's a complex ecosystem, and I think the way we can strengthen the ecosystem is to collaborate and to find what are our the strengths of each one, and how can we complement those strengths, and not to duplicate efforts on the same side, and how can we strengthen together the whole ecosystem for these projects to be possible and to be successful.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think I just can say thank you. It's been really inspiring to meet you and hear more about your story. Also, a lot of people comment like, Jeremy, they think you were born for this role, so maybe you can join us for another time. And for our special guest, well, people say thank you, and they really like to hear you. And well, they will stay. They will look at your websites and follow your startups. And before leaving, can we just make a picture? You just need to smile. And okay, so 1, 2, 3.
Selfie.
Yeah, it's perfect. Okay, so well, have a good night over there and good evening for Emiliano.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.